If I asked you the question, who counted among we the people when our Constitution was new? Well, not very many people. Certainly I wouldn't. Certainly not people who were held in human bondage. And
the 15th Amendment is very important to our Constitution because what it does is it protects the rights of every citizen, the right to vote, and to not be disenfranchised from voting, whether it be for your sexual preference, race, gender, or even if you had a past conviction, that it is a true democracy in our country to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to have input, and that input comes by way of your vote.
If the 15th Amendment didn't exist, we would be in world trouble. It's possible that it couldn't even be Barack Obama as president, if you think about it. You want to go that deep.
Black citizens, public officials didn't care what they thought. Elected people didn't feel like that they were important. You have to get votes to get elected. And when they had a segment of people that couldn't vote, they played to the audience that could vote. And I think we'd be having serious marches, and government would be unstable.
Black suffrage was rejected in all of those states, sometimes by large margins. Most Northern whites clearly did not think that blacks should be voting even after the Civil War. In the South, no state permitted even free blacks to vote after about 1830. Before that, a couple of southern states, Tennessee and North Carolina, had. Obviously, slaves were not permitted to vote anywhere.
Honestly, I believe that there was no 15th Amendment. I think that there would be a supremacy attitude in this country that I see that is re-evolving. I believe that we've come from the stereotype of just being black and white. But I do know that there's a hateful spirit that I believe is trying to capture our country and take us back to where we were.
Even though the 15th Amendment grants people from different backgrounds the right to vote, whether they vote or not depends on who's running. The black voter turnout rate declined for the first time in 20 years in presidential election, falling to 59.6% in 2016 after reaching a record high of 66.6% in 2012. The Latino voter turnout rate held steady at 47.6% in 2016 compared with 48% in 2012. About 21.4% of the United States population of eligible voters were not registered to vote in 2014.
We're in the voting business here, and we register folks to vote. We actually produce all the voter books that goes to the various polls throughout Jefferson County. So we want every eligible voter to cast their vote on election day. Well, if you look at the percentages, that doesn't happen.
If you don't vote, your views are not going to be in the hands of the public officials that do vote. I mean, on laws. So if a large segment of people fail to vote, then those people may not get considered in the amendments that are offered and for laws that are offered. So there's a terrible consequence to not voting.
I think the power of the vote can't be stated enough. That's one. You've got these different groups, right? I'm going to define one group as very simple. Generation Boomer, Generation X, or Generation Y. If Generation Boomer votes more than Generation X and Y, then laws that are talked about, laws that are considered, laws that are passed, will lean towards the people that are actually doing the voting. And so when you see younger people being more involved and or engaged in the voting process, exercising their right to vote. I'm the tail end of Generation X. I'm 30, I'll be 37 this year. But you all are Generation Y. The more we vote, we as in a 18 to 35, or whatever, in the 30s you want to put that number at, laws then we become more able to influence the type of laws that are made and or passed.
There are federal elections, such as for president. My basic adage is, when I tell folks who don't vote, if you don't vote, then you shouldn't complain.
But I think a lot of people don't vote the same reason a lot of people don't give back to the college or the HBCU they went to. A lot of things have to be taught at an early age. Voting has to be a part of the conversation before you start voting at 18.
People don't vote because they forget how hard it was for people to get the right to vote. We focus so much on science and technology and math as we should, but we've kind of gotten away from teaching history and civics and realized that our votes do matter. Our votes do change things. I think the Doug Jones election in Alabama is proof that every single vote matters.
In that race, when you break down numbers, black females were extremely critical in Doug Jones' election. A lot of times, a lot of us just check out because the people that are running are not inspiring or motivating us.
That it takes one who has a love for people to serve in government in order to reinvigorate, energize the base to say, your vote matters, your vote is your voice. You have no voice if you don't have a vote.
There's a lot of voter suppression in the state of Alabama, Southeast, everywhere. We say all these things are mandatory, but then we create all these hoops for people not to vote. And I think it's because of some of the things we saw with Doug Jones' election. Unfortunately, sometimes people aren't progressive, they're restrictive, and they like to see things done in the old way. And so in order to keep it that way, you restrict, you create these laws where a lot of voting groups, black people, young people, Hispanic people, don't vote.